Good evening everyone and welcome to NXTGEN Racing's broadcast with live Q&A with David Perel. If you do have any questions throughout the show, please drop them in the comments and we'll be sure to get as many questions asked as possible. And for anyone that doesn't know who David Perel is, of course he's professional GT3 driver for Ferrari and has won two back-to-back Spa 24-hour races, in two different categories and with two different teams, and has had several podiums within the GT3 Blanche Pain Series, also now known as the GT World Tour and the European Series. And the show will get underway in approximately 5 minutes, and we'll be right back with you and get this question and answer underway. And thank you for joining us. Hello everyone who's currently watching at the moment. We do apologise for the short delay in getting this underway. We have just received a message from David himself just to let us know he's running a little bit late. So we shouldn't be too much longer, possibly around 5-10 minutes at most, and then we'll get this Q&A underway. Thank you there for everyone for waiting. We do apologise, David was running a little bit late, and welcome to tonight's Q&A, David.
Hi guys, thanks for having me. Sorry I was late.
Yeah, it's all good. So just do you want to give us a little introduction about yourself, just to cover the basics for anyone who's not sure?
Yeah, sure. I'm David Perel. I long-time sim racing fan and the founder of Coach Dave Academy and the Sim Grid. Um, Started out as first as a regular gamer when I was, I suppose, from day zero playing Nintendo, and then was always a big racing fan. Enjoyed all the racing games from Gran Turismo 1, and used Gran Turismo to sort of prepare myself for real life racing. Eventually became a professional racing driver in my 30s. I now race for customer Ferrari teams in the European Le Mans Series, Le Mans, and GT World Challenge. And you can play me in as me in ACC. But yeah, my day-to-day stuff is focused on building out the sim grid, and on the weekends I'm a racing driver.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And I must say, if anyone who hasn't checked it out, please do check out the SimGrid, because it's a fantastic platform for sim racers who are using the ACC sim. And you mentioned Le Mans there, David, so this is going to bring us on to our first question, which we had submitted by one of our community members. If you had a free choice on team drivers and car to enter, who would it be, which car, and would it be the Spa 24 Hour or the Le Mans?
For me, it's Le Mans. That's always been my dream. I've always wanted to race at Le Mans, so that's all I ever think about. Um, Car, Ferrari. I've always wanted to race a Ferrari. I do that now. I wouldn't want to change that for anything. So to do Le Mans in a Ferrari is ace. And if it was a factory lineup, okay, I'm not a factory driver. I'm a paid driver, but I don't race for the factory. Will probably be Davide Rigon and Alessandro Pierguidi. Um, at the moment, I'm going probably with one of the strongest AM lineups. And I think using the word am is incorrect because the two of us in the car are professionals. But this year I'll be racing at Le Mans for the first time with Matthew Griffin and Duncan Cameron. Duncan is the am in our lineup, but he's incredibly quick and gives very good feedback, makes very few, if any, mistakes. So yeah, that would where I am right now is sort of the ideal situation.
Yeah, that does seem a pretty strong lineup, especially for such a big event like the Le Mans series or
Yeah.
the Le Mans 24 Hour. And so, obviously, keeping on track of where the questions are kind of going at the moment, when you visit a new circuit or a new circuit comes up in a sim, how do you prepare to learn that circuit for your first race or your first competitive
Do you mean
event there?
if I go to a new circuit in real life and that circuit's in a sim, do I use the sim for practice?
Yeah, is that the best preparation
Yeah.
for you, or is it actually driving the track?
Um, I suppose it's a combination because in real life we use different gears, different braking points. The best, and also depends how accurate the track is in the sim. For example, if you wanted to practice for Spa, you can't use iRacing because they use a very old model of the track. But you could use ACC because ACC have modeled the track incredibly accurately. They do the most accurate track modelings at the moment, in terms of gradients, cambers, curbs, reference points, and so on. But still, you have to consider that there's no sim that really feels like real life.
Yeah,
So
well,
I,
content.
I do I, I do use the sim for practice, but not specifically to learn the details of a track. I will get a feeling for a track from a sim, but there's nothing like when you get there, the gradients and the bumps and everything just translates in a much more aggressive way. So yeah, the sim is used as a reference, but it's not the ultimate.
Yeah, of course, it's never going to be quite like the actual force you get from the car through a sim wheel at the moment. Of course,
Yeah,
the wheels are improving, and I'm sure one day we will have something very close to it, hopefully.
yeah, I
And
hope so too.
yeah, it would be interesting to actually see how much force is actually in a racing car from my personal view.
I mean, look, the forces are the biggest thing you have to get used to, and it's difficult to explain. It's the weight of the car, and when the car is moving underneath you, even though you're strapped in very tight, there's still a weight that it's difficult to explain. That was the biggest shock when I drove a GT car for the first time, and I'd only practiced on Gran Turismo and R Factor, and I was at Imola. I could not believe the weight of the car through some of the corners, even though the corners were easy flat in one or two sections. Just the weight of the car moving around under me was a shock, and I was lifting in the first couple of laps because I just didn't expect that kind of sensation.
Yeah, that's definitely a nice detail to add in there. So, a bit of inside experience. And from your experience, which, if you had to pick a sim, which would you see as the closest to actually racing?
ACC at the moment does the best job of translating a GT car. They definitely, if you want to experience, or if you want to get an idea of what a GT car feels like, ACC brings that experience as close as possible. Apparently, R Factor does a job of the prototypes, um, and there's a lot of iRacing fans out there, but I personally don't enjoy the GT experience in iRacing. I do play iRacing, but for you know not as a simulator, more as just to enjoy myself in a sim. Um, for me at the moment, ACC is the best out there in terms of physics and the sensations that you get. And that's because at the moment they focus on one category, which is GT racing, and they speak directly to GT teams and GT drivers for feedback. So they model the physics based on legitimate and consistent driver feedback, and they get to focus on a specific niche.
Yeah, I have heard the pre-made setups in ACC are also actual real racing setups, apart from they've had to put different numerical values in for sim racing, so it's not publicly announcing a setup.
Um, I I don't know about that. I mean, some of the setups that we use in ACC are not what we would do in real life, but for sure, conceptually, they get most of it right.
Yeah, that's some great feedback, and of course we all know ACC is pro- I would personally see it the best GT3, GT4 driving experience I've had myself on PC and console, to be honest.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, there's nothing. Gran Turismo on consoles is the best all rounder because they have the best graphics and so on. But I still think that physics wise, ACC is probably superior. But GT Sport on a console is not far behind. I grew up on GT Gran Turismo, so I'm very familiar with how the car feels and everything. I still believe that they get the weighting of the steering probably the best. And GT Sport does get one thing right, is that if you're in close, if you're having contact with another car, okay, they don't have a damage model, but the way that the cars behave when they touch each other is a little bit more realistic. You can get a little bit more aggressive in Gran Turismo.
Yeah, to be honest, I've never actually had a chance to play Gran Turismo since Gran Turismo 2 was the last one I
Wow.
played, which is quite a while back.
Yeah, that's a very long time ago, man.
Yeah, just a little bit. And in your experience, obviously taking into account wheels, pedals, the actual sim, how close is sim racing actually getting to real life? Because obviously we seen the phenomenon of James Baldwin go from the sim to racing and had a fantastic season. Just wondering how that would have possibly helped him.
Oh, it helped me as well. I mean, I when I went GT racing in the Italian GT for the first time, I had never set foot in a GT car. I'd only used Gran Turismo and a little bit of R Factor. Um, and by the end of the weekend, I was fighting for the podium and helping the championship leaders who were my teammates. I was defending for them as well. So to me, it's not a direct translation, as I said earlier, but there's definitely enough that you can learn from a sim that can at least help you in real life. But it's not. There's also been examples of top line sim racers who don't make the transition. So it's not the same for everyone. You do need an element of driving talent at least that translates to the real world. A lot of good sim racers are good sim racers because they put in a billion hours and practice to perfection. And then you get some other sim racers who are more adaptable and able to learn different things quicker. And that's the key thing in real life. If you have a talent for adaptability, then your sim racing experience will translate well to real life. If you don't have that, then you will struggle a bit more.
All right, that's quite interesting because I know obviously James Baldwin and a few others have taken the world by storm, should we say, from the way they sort of came to racing. And in your experience with different sim hardware in terms of wheels and pedals, which, in your opinion, has the best feel for actually driving a sim?
Um, well, I'm on the minority here. I don't personally feel a big difference between a DD and belt-driven wheel. I actually just recently had to do a lot of back-to-back testing on both, and I still don't feel the difference, and I'm paying a lot of attention to it. So to me, the wheelbase is not the most important element. If you want a DD wheel, by all means get one, and they are cool. They look cool and everything, and they're super trendy to have. But if you're on a belt-driven wheel and you can't quite afford to upgrade to a DD, don't worry, it's not the end of the world. But what is very important for a sim racing experience, in my opinion, is having a good set of pedals. You definitely need load cells. I never used to think that. I was wrong on that. I thought that the potentiometers were fine, but load cells are give you so much more feeling, and it just generally helps in a better way. So I would recommend getting any set of load cells, using Felt or the Thrustmaster TLCMs or the Fanatec V3s, any of those. If you get either of those or any of those, you will be fine. Um, and that to me is the most important bit. I definitely wouldn't have a moving rig, those ones which sit on
The motion platform ones.
immersion platforms. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that because there's too much latency involved. And a curved display to me is ideal. I have obviously played on triples. They are cool, but I think that if you have a really nice curved display, you'll be more than fine. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's just out of curiosity. You mentioned you wouldn't want a motion platform or wouldn't have one. Why is that? Obviously, I've never had chance to have a go in one. I'm just curious to see what the difference is.
The difference is that with the motion platforms, the car moves to the motion, the actual platform itself moves too late, and it's barely perceptible. You can barely feel it, but by the time the car has caught itself, let's say, by the time the oversteer has happened, the platform communicated way too late.
Alright, so there's quite a bit of a delay between what you visually seeing and actually feeling.
Yeah, it's latency. So I think it's like a couple of hundreds, but it's, in my opinion, that sort of latency is more important than what you would feel in a wheel or so on, because there's latency in everything. You know, light can only travel so fast.
Yeah.
Or so, but I feel like in motion platforms, it's exaggerated to a point where it's not really comfortable. Played in a played. I have driven a sim, which was it was a proper Formula Sim that they use in the W series and so on. And it used to be, it was like an old F1 sim back in the day. They've upgraded it quite a lot, and that had a motion platform, which was not so bad. And they also had airbags that push up against your body when you hit the brakes and when you're turning and stuff to simulate G-force. And when I first saw it, I was like, "Oh, this." I'm pretty skeptical about this because it's not gonna. There's gonna be too much latency, and the feeling will be out of sync. But it was actually brilliant. It was incredibly well synced and felt so natural. But it also cost £1 million. So you know,
Yeah, it's not your everyday sitting at home
no,
driving sim, is it?
no, no.
So in terms of skill and technique, in your opinion, what makes the biggest difference between in the sim world what we class as alien drivers and those who are fast but only off pace by say a second or two?
Don't necessarily understand. You mean what separates an alien from a regular driver?
Yeah, like what
Okay.
skills and
Yeah, yeah.
techniques do they use?
Well, the techniques and stuff, that depends from for each of them. I mean, for the most part, an alien driver is very smooth, almost linear. If you watch any top level sim racer, they barely turn when they turn the wheel, it's one turn. There's no corrections or anything. So incredibly precise. But the secret to becoming an alien driver is just hours of practice. You probably have to do about 8 hours a day. If you can do that, then you'll become an alien. Um, and not 8 hours in one day, but 8 hours every day for months. And that's how you get good in a sim. That's the secret.
Yeah, that's quite a large amount of time. I would imagine not very many people could spare, and of course that's why aliens are rather
I mean,
not very common.
you do get some, there's a lot of top level sim racers who don't spend that amount of time. They just have incredible talent for a particular game, like their natural sense of timing suits a particular game. Then you get the rare driver like James Baldwin who can cross over between multiple sims and dominate. Davide Tonizza is another one. Um, so there's all different levels. It becomes a challenge to try and beat a Tonizza or Baldwin when they have an incredible level of talent, but also put in hours upon hours of work. But you can get very close if you just do the work part, and you may be missing a little bit of talent compared to them. With the practice and work, you can get to their level. But you have to be a professional. You can't put in 8 hours a day for months without being paid to do it because you need to eat in the evening. So, there's always that sort of toss up. It depends what you want from your life.
Yeah, that is very true, and I have had the chance to share the sim with Mr. Baldwin, and he is fast, very fast.
He's a natural talent for, especially in sim racing.
Oh yeah, definitely. And so moving on to our final question before we wrap up tonight, David. Um, Growing up, obviously you mentioned you started on a sim before going to actual real racing, and I know you did do some karting at a younger age. So, growing up, who was your idol that you looked up to in the racing world?
Um, is Valentino Rossi, and was my sort of he was my ideal picture of a true racer, and also Fernando Alonso. But I paid more attention to Rossi, um, and I loved his lines on a race on a bike, and I tried um, to go quick on a bike. You have to be very smooth. You have to do, especially the old school bikes. You have to do a V line, V-shaped line, and that's kind of how I try to mimic my car racing stuff, is to be smooth and to do V lines, V-shaped lines. Um, and even though he was on a bike, there's just the style of the way that the, the his bike moved and everything, and his style of racing was just to me a massive inspiration. It's why I have yellow gloves. It's why I have a yellow dot on the top of my helmet. It's because I've been inspired by Rossi.
Well, that was definitely interesting. Not kind of what I was expecting, to be honest. From your answer there, I was expecting some form of a racing car driver, but yeah, it. I understand where you come from. He's fantastic on a bike. Absolutely dominated for a while as well.
Yeah, it's just, you know, the when I was growing up, Formula One drivers, let's say, were more like robots. Now these days, you see more character from them because of social media and stuff. But in the early 2000s and late 90s, they were corporate machines, and they didn't have much character that you could see during events, which we were watching on TV. I'm sure behind closed doors, they had lots of character, but we didn't get the benefit of seeing that. So yeah, it was more, you could see more of that character in motorbike riders. And I was always a big MotoGP fan, or at the time it was called 500s. But yeah, I looked at someone like Rossi, who was outgoing, who had a lot of character, who's incredibly aggressive and highly intelligent in racing situations. The way he manipulated his competitors was something to be inspired by. Even though it's very aggressive, it's also inspiring. So that's why I looked up to Rossi more than anyone else.
Well, thank you very much, David, for joining us for our Q&A here at Next Gen Racing. And of course,
No problem.
thank you for the opportunity for us to partner with yourselves and the Coach Dave Academy. And for anyone who hasn't checked it out, go and have a look. We have our own events on there, along with a whole list of the official SimGrid, SRO, and other communities on there. And also check out Coach Dave Academy for any ACC setups or ACC related items.
Thank you so much, Kev. Appreciate you taking the time to interview me, and I hope everyone enjoys their time this evening. And good luck.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us, David, and taking time out your busy schedule.
No worries. Cheers, guys.